The color of distance is the color of an emotion, the color of solitude and of desire. Blue, blue, blau, blau, blaues. The word travels through the air and disperses. Blue, blue, blau, blau, blaues. I speak her name, and the word rings out like a bell. I can feel myself resonating in this room. I often wander, moving my body in no particular direction, my only guide being the fluctuating weather patterns that dictate the blue of the sky above me. Yet the sky can only tell me that blue is the color of where I am not, and I remember that the feeling of blue is not about an apparent sadness, but rather the sense of longing that pulls me forward. I have to remind myself that even when immersed in the blue of the sea, I only rest at its surface, floating on scattered light, that I'm situated in the center of two blues that mimic and mirror each other, like parallel surfaces that couldn't be more far apart. This feeling makes me realize that my body will continue to wander, searching for something that can never be touched. The first time I lost myself was in Egypt. It is here where mankind flourished, where the Egyptian people thrived. I once watched a funeral procession during my time in Egypt. The long boats were rowed slowly along the Nile. The air was filled with the sounds of the mourners who wailed and wept, who, although sad for the earthly loss of the pharaoh, knew that he was only just beginning a long, fruitful journey. The pharaoh's body, made ready for his journey to the afterworld, was brought to shore and carried into the temple, laid to rest along with all his worldly possessions. His tomb was well decorated with inscriptions to aid the pharaoh into the next life, and was adorned with many jewels, whose shine was lost when the temple was sealed into darkness. Perhaps it was the desperation for an assured afterlife that led Egypt to create the first synthetic blue. Perhaps, if they could just hold blue, their souls would be allowed passage, allowed to cross that insurmountable blue, somewhere further down the Nile. The waves gently wash over me, massaging my memory. I recall storms past, tempestuous winds and waves that carried even the bravest sailors down into the cold, dark depths. Odysseus's men wept with fear as they held tight to the rails of their ship, praying to reunite with their lovelorn wives, whom they had left many years ago to go fight the battle of Achilles and Hector in far-off Troy. The Achaeans sailed across the wide Red Sea, amid monsters who swam beneath the red waves. Now, as I walk past the whitewashed statues, I can only see their cool bodies, frozen in stone, as if stunned by the gaze of Medusa, glorified in their moment of action. Men, great heroes, found themselves caught in the middle of divine conflicts, often at great cost. My name was different then. I traveled unknown, fluid in this masculine culture. Their concerns were not for the colors, but for the forms of the body. I was known as either Kianos or Glaucus. Kianos referred to dark colors and denoted a deep blue, as well as violet, brown, and black. Glaucus, on the other end, referred to light colors, like the stormy grays of Athena's eyes, as well as some blues and yellows. Glaucus is also where the word glaucoma finds its origin, referring to a disease of the eye, which gradually causes vision loss and eventually blindness. As Europe fell into the Middle Ages, the use of blue also saw a steep drop. Vanquished from paintings almost entirely, blue was used only by peasants and those of low rank. It was not until the 12th century that blue saw a rise in popularity. Manufacturers of stained glass began to use blue glass in cathedral windows, which cast a mournful, divine glow. The cathedrals, filled with sonorous hymns, the quiet murmurings of prayer, and the flickerings of candles filtered the blue light, and the room fell into a spell, recalling the convulsions of the ecstatic. Out of the cloudy blue air arose the world of Abraham and Sarah, of Jacob and his ladder to heaven, of the doomed Tower of Babel, and the sacred covenant which God made with Noah and sealed with the rainbow. Inspired by the power of the blue light, painters began to depict the Virgin Mary wearing blue robes, evoking her sorrow over her son and also the purity of her nature. Now, as I walk down the halls of this museum, the color blue surrounds me. I feel it pressing in from the walls, and the robes of a queen, smiling regally far above my head, on the dress of a flaxen-haired girl who sits at a piano with her flaxen-haired sisters, standing at attention. The littlest one sighs as she looks lovingly at her sisters, waiting until she too can join in their music. Blue is the color of the frock of the broad-faced woman who Gauguin painted on the Tahitian shores. The Impressionists understood the movement of color, of the emotions of a moment, of the simplicity of gazing upon that which had never before merited a second glance. Van Gogh was a particular favorite of mine. There is a musicality to it, a melancholy so deep and real. Did I feel sad for that tortured man? Was he mad? Or did he simply understand better than anyone the weight of color? Did Cézanne also feel that fever, the man who could evoke so much with the portrait of apples? And where did I stand when these men unveiled their masterpieces? Or when they stacked their canvases away, only to be unearthed and brought into a new light? I stand where I stand now, before them, but not a part of them, witness, but not participant. And to Yves Klein, who defined his own color, I was nothing but a tool, an apparatus for the making of a mark, pressed up against a cold panel where I left my mark, like the caveman of Lascaux who signed his work with the outline of his crooked pinky. But now, I will take back my place. Now my mark will remain my mark. In Iran, they had caught on early to the nature of blue. The sky was so clear that day. The heat caused my brow to perspire, and the hair stuck on the back of my neck. But I had never felt more beautiful. The domes, shaped like full breasts, rested atop the buildings and sloped upwards to kiss the sky. Walking inside the mosque, we were shaded by that same sloping ceiling. At night, it was almost too hot to touch, and I felt your hand burning against the small of my back. I walk through the galleries and feel none of the warmth which held sway over Iran that day. I think of the girl who sat underneath the eaves of the doorway to try to escape the scorching heat of that long ago day. Passing by the mosaics, my body melds with the patterns. I weave in and out of the florals until my eyes cannot focus on one or the other. A cool fountain gurgles and bubbles nearby. I want to wash my hands in that fountain. My finger traces a sloping door, following up to the point of the arch. I begin to lose myself again in the dizzying array, weaving through a field of cornflowers, spinning myself around and around until finally collapse. Have you ever heard of the famed indigo fields out in the moors of India? Whole plantations were dedicated to the plant, which would bloom into blue flowers. A peaceful picture, waving fields of flowers, but the conditions of the workers were harsh. Indigo would be grown as a cash crop, and the process to harvest and process the plant into dye was difficult, dangerous, and laborious. Workers wore full face masks, covering everything except for their eyes, to try to escape the putrid fumes. The blue leaked inward, filling the bodies of the workers. Perhaps it entered through their eyes. Even just gazing at the mixture caused it to creep inward. It is said that the workers would spit blue for days, and that an egg left near the vat would turn its contents blue. I watch myself here in this room. The silence of the film encapsulates me, and I'm made aware of my body interacting in space. We chose the space because it centered us. This space was a break from the landscape, and our action felt like a break in time. There is something ancient that we evoked that day, as I stood between the wide columns and turned that white sheet blue in the small bath. I was not alone that day, but with you, standing, watching me through your lens, following my movements, I was alone. Did you see my hands turning blue? They were blue for days. No matter how hard I scrubbed, my skin was dyed blue. Slowly but surely, they unblued themselves, day by day, until finally the rosiness of my skin returned, and they no longer had that deathly pallor. Clipped up on that line, the fabric became a flag, a declaration of my action. We feared that the wind would overtake us and the sheet would be ripped from the line and would fly like a ghost up into the eaves, but I secretly wished to set it free. My heart was lifted along with the sheet. The music returned to me, but watching it here now, the silence overwhelms. There is no music in this room, but I can hear it bubbling, coursing in me, as I did when I stood by and watched.
I step into a blue funk. Look up. Look right. Blue flashes in my eyes. Blue bottle buzzing. Lazy day. The sky blue butterfly sways on a cornflower, lost in the warmth of the blue heat haze. Singing the blue, quiet and slowly. Blue of my heart, blue of my dreams. Slow blue love of delphinium day.
Blue is the universal love in which man bathes. It is the terrestrial paradise. Blue.
I'm walking along the beach in a howling gale. Another year is passing. In the roaring waters, I hear the voices of dead friends. Love is life that lasts forever. My heart's memory turns to you.
And do you remember the day that we climbed up to the roof to try to capture a piece of that broad blue sky? The wind tousled my hair, and I thought of that sheet that we'd trapped between those two columns, tossing wildly in the wind, trying to free itself to join the blue sky like a loose kite. You were there too, although you were hidden. I know how it feels to be a witness. I do it all the time. How does it feel to be exposed? To feel the gaze of the lens bounced back to you? Do you feel like you've been revealed? Now, your hiding place has been upended, and now we are together. We are this blue. Our body knows no bounds. We feel expansive, like we could fill this world with our sensations, with our light.